from Kansas State University. This is Agriculture Today. Eric Atkinson here. Here's what's ahead. K-State's Ignacio Ciampitti will talk about the row crop harvest difficulties that you producers have contended with these past few weeks. In particular, looking at the slowness of crop dry down and how that will impact the timing of your remaining harvest. Then from the Kansas Agriculture in the Classroom program, Cathy, Musick, and Briana Jacobus will provide an update on that program's activities in support of introducing agricultural topics in school teachings around the state via the A+STEM teaching materials. And later, K-State's Charlie Lee on garter snakes attempting to enter dwellings and outbuildings during the fall and what to do to keep them outside. All this and more right here on Agriculture Today.
What is radon? Home exposure to radon gas is the leading cause of lung cancer death in the United States for non-smokers. In Kansas, 1 in 4 homes will test at or above the EPA action level. The Surgeon General recommends all homes be tested and fixed if necessary. Visit kansasradonprogram.org for more information. Test, fix, save a life. This message brought to you by the Kansas Radon Program, the Kansas Association of Broadcasters, and this station.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, coming to you from the campus of Kansas State University. We've been referencing this for some time now, the difficulties with this fall harvest in Kansas in 2018, what with the weather delays, principally overly wet conditions, really stirring up problems in our fields. We thought we'd bring by today crop production and cropping systems specialist Ignacio Ciampitti and catch some observations from him as to how this harvest has gone and what things, if any, we might have learned that would be useful looking to the next growing season. But for way too many growers out there, Ignacio, it's just frankly been a mess trying to get corn, grain sorghum, and soybeans all in decent shape.
Yes, thanks, Eric, as always, for the invitation. And yeah, the summary of this harvest growing season so far, it might be maybe the word mess. And I think that if you look at all the complications, we start harvest time with a very good conditions, around the mid-September, immediately after late September, and the first couple of weeks of October was completely a disaster for many situations. And this is not only impacting harvest operations, in many situations it's also impacting final yields and also the quality of the crops that are on the field.
It's hard to generalize across the entire state, but there have clearly been areas where the yields have taken a dramatic hit.
Yeah, and that I would say that it could be depending also field by field, because based on your decisions on planting date, based on your decisions of the length of the maturity that you use on your crops. So that will put your operation for harvest sooner or later. And then I think that if you go field by field, the situations are quite different. At the state level, we can say that one of the main impacts that we have seen is shortening of the growing season. If you think about, our cold temperatures, really high impact of those cold temperatures, on the western part of the state, northwest. So anything that was not full ready to mature, for sure got a hit in those situations. And then the heat, sooner or later they will be seeing that. It's hard to compare because many times you don't have a situation, my crop was not hit versus something that was hit. In this case, everything got hit. And then the challenges are connected to kind of a really sharpened termination in terms of grain filling. So that means that kernel weight, or grain weight, in many situations affected. So we are not maximizing yield from maximum kernel weight. The challenge connected to the problems of freeze damage or freeze or cold temperature impact is also delaying on drying down. We are seeing already in some of our studies that it's delayed because some of these grains, that they were interrupted. They were interrupted with a high moisture content. So if you look at our corn and sorghum, very similarly, they reach black layer, what we call full mature. Basically, they will not change the size of the grains when they are around 25 to 35% of grain moisture. If you have a freeze or any stress impacting that grain before that time, it will be impacting the grain and terminating the grain, filling with a really high moisture content. So you will finish in potentially in some situations maybe with 40 or 50%. So when you finish in that situation, to lose that water content, it goes extremely slow. Because if you have high relative humidity, that's another problem that is impacting your drying down. So we are seeing situations of, specifically on some of that corn, sorghum got impacted, before maturity, that is more related to sorghum in many situations. Not much of the corn is really slow drying down. And then when farmers are going out to start harvesting these fields, we need to start looking specifically at this drying down, because we might find out that maybe more than 20% of moisture. And still it will take a couple more days or weeks in order to get to, if you are in corn, maybe 15.5% of moisture, and then for sorghum around 14%. So we need to be quite patient for some of that crop that was affected by freeze. The other complication also is, that we need to discuss is all this water. We always take precipitation. We are glad to have precipitation, but this has been
too much of a good thing.
Too much of a good thing and too late of a good thing.
Right.
We are just starting to kind of gain pace. When you're looking at our crop progress condition report for last week, in sorghum, for example, on the harvest, we are behind from the 5-year average, and we are 10% behind. My main concern today is not too much on getting that crop out of the way, but it's also to make sure that we get it out and we put priority, for our farmers on the ones that are more susceptible. In those fields, basically, that they're already looking for problems of lodging, or even on situations on soybeans we have seen in the last couple of weeks, swelling and shattering. We have a nice article that we put together last week on discussing this shattering problem. And sometimes it's very unique. The pods are basically helping those seeds to protect. But the challenge is when those seeds start swell, then those pods start immediately slowly opening, and then any water that is entering inside of the pod cavity, it will be right temperature, right water content, and those seeds can germinate. So we start seeing sprouting. And the problem with sprouting that we need to emphasize, we are seeing sprouting in corn in some situations. The sprouting is loose quality, because those seeds, when they start germinating, they start using sugars. They start using that protein that we accumulate. So we start losing quality anytime, because there is basically a depletion of using those enrichment that we have from all the growing seasons. So we will get penalized when we are trying to sell that. So we will be seeing problems on quality connected to sprouting. We might see problems, as I mentioned before, lack of a complete season based on termination for cold temperature, low test weight in some situations, combining to those plants that are more susceptible. So we have situations of mold. We start seeing moldy years. For corn that was not harvested yet, we start seeing some development of fungus with this humidity, and then with a little bit more temperature, so which is prime conditions for all this catastrophe. And at this point, main priority is to make sure that you start scouting, look at field and put priority on what are the fields that they tend to be more susceptible, and start getting those out of the way. On soybeans, something to emphasize, anytime that you are losing on 4 seeds on the ground per square foot is a bushel. Okay, that's not much.
Right.
Okay,
and that's happening more than frequently out there right now.
I can tell that I have seen in the last couple of weeks on my trips, I have seen a lot of these. So a lot of shattering, a lot of places where we should be probably start going in that direction first and make sure that we get out of the way. And then also we need to realize that soybeans, they will tend to lose water very fast. That's something that we did on a study, a couple of years, and this year we also did it again. You need to realize that once the soybeans are mature, they will lose water immediately. So if we don't harvest on time, if we can do it, and if we have the chance, if you don't harvest on time, you will lose volume. Okay? So, and this is telling you how fast immediately, they are, even with these conditions still, how fast in those situations soybeans can drop water content. On sorghum and corn, the situation is a little bit different. For sorghum, we have an article that came out last week. It's probably one of the first times, that we have some data on dry down for sorghum, to be honest. And we did a research study this year, starting to look at the information and weather that we have from this year, from beginning of September to beginning of October. And we were black layer on these sorghum hybrids. We were around beginning of September. And then it took for that hybrid to go from 35% water content to harvest moisture, 28 days. Just recalling the conditions that we have, the end of September, 1st of October, really bad temperatures, very slow. This is an example of how long it takes sometimes, just to go from 34% to 14, 20 units. So not the best year in terms of a grain filling at the end, to maximize some situations, volume of kernel size or grain size, seed size. So we'll be seeing some issues, on that side. We might see some situations, on losing on quality. But I think so far, when you're looking at some of the crops in some areas, I think that we can say that overall, by looking backward, with all the season that we have this year, I think that we are not ending into a negative balance. I think that if I need to call, I will say we are almost close to a neutral balance.
Multi-layered problems here, and not much that a producer, even in a management sense, could have done to prevent this situation. It's not a matter of adjustment beforehand. It's a matter now of making good decisions at harvest time, and that's just the nature of cropping.
It's just, at this point, to be honest, it's just the weather. Right. And the weather is dictating exactly what we can do when we cannot. And I think that at this point, is as farmers, we need to be wise on making the right decisions. And I think that we need to really be on more than ever on top of our fields to make sure that we can capture the maximum volumes and without losing quality.
Once more, you continue to funnel information on harvest in Kansas in the E-Update newsletter series. So producers, we'd urge you to stay on top of things through that fine outlet. It's at agronomy.ksu.edu. They post articles fresh and new each Friday afternoon right there. Mm-hmm. Ignacio, thanks as always.
Thanks for the invitation.
Some reflections on where we are and how we'll finish out this fall row crop harvest in Kansas with the adversity that you producers have been dealing with thanks to the untimely weather. That's Ignacio Ciampitti, Crop Production and Cropping Systems Specialist, K-State Research and Extension. We'll be back after this break. You're listening to Agriculture Today. Agricultural producers, landowners, and creditors, you have a partner in your legal and financial needs. Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services offers reliable, trusted information and guidance. Whether you need advice for ag credit concerns or are transitioning your operation to the next owner, Kansas Agricultural Mediation Services can assist you in making sound decisions for your business. To learn more, call 800-321-3276 or visit us online. Welcome back. You're listening to Agriculture Today, and we are well into another scholastic year. So we're due an update on a very important program that's based at K-State and serving the educational community out there throughout the state for well over 3 decades now. It's the Agriculture in the Classroom program. We've invited over from that program the Executive Director, Cathy Musick, and the Communications and Marketing Specialist, Briana Jacobus. And first of all, Cathy, give us a sense of the health and well-being of the Ag in the Classroom program currently.
Okay, well, Eric, I kind of consider that we're in a renaissance or a time of change at Ag in the Classroom in moving towards new directions, taking a look at some of the directions that the education system is going in Kansas with the support of the Commissioner of Education at the Department of Education with individual learning plans and hands-on learning plans. I really kind of think it's our time, as well as some of the other youth organizations' times like 4-H and FFA, to bring to kids in the state hands-on learning.
And if folks don't know, it's hard to imagine that there will be anybody out there not familiar with the pretense of the program. Ag in the Classroom serves to augment school teachings with an agricultural theme. That's still the basis of what goes on, right?
That's right. So we provide good tools to teachers and now directly to students for them to explore options in agriculture and to understand the food system. And that, of course, all towards being able to support our population, our growing population, and to make sure that we have food security.
So when you say that the hands-on concept is taking root and you're adapting to that, in what sense? Give us an example or two of curriculum development that's leading toward that end.
Okay, so all of our lesson plans have a hands-on, project-based learning focus or format. And so, for instance, one example might be the edible soil profile, where we're actually not eating dirt, but basically what we're doing is allowing them to learn about soil health and then also the layers in the soil profile. And they mimic those layers with using inexpensive different types of cereal. And then, of course, for the soil health, we have the decomposer, which is the gummy worm. And we have the organic matter, which is the good stuff, which we represent using M&Ms. So they are quite joyful to be involved in that particular lesson plan. And another example, again, using food, is a tomatoes lesson plan that we do, where we actually have the kids purchase tomatoes and make salsa. And so they're using math and science and language arts to do this salsa lesson plan, because they have to actually create an advertisement. So they begin to understand all of the careers that it takes to get tomatoes, in this instance, from field to table. And so we do a lot of that kind of thing.
That's just a couple of examples.
Right.
So we could go on and on.
We could.
About the many things that the program has developed over the years and still implements at a very successful level. Now, Briana, the program now has a new website or an updated version. What's happening with that?
Yes, we have had the opportunity this last year to completely redo our website from scratch, which has been a very exciting process. Our website is much more colorful now, and it's a lot easier to use. So if you have been to our old website, we knew it was kind of clunky and kind of not as user-friendly as it could be, and now we're excited to be able to offer our lesson plans in a much more colorful format that are a lot easier for teachers to use, as well as our Kids Connection magazines, like Cathy said, for students directly to use.
So to point out, the website not only is an avenue for introducing one to the program, but it does have those lesson plans downloadable on the site, correct?
Yes, the lesson plans are all downloadable off of our website, and they are all free for any teacher or student to use.
And one of the neat things, too, is we're able to do teacher features, and we have all of our latest news up as well. And so anyone that's interested in becoming a new donor, you can find out a lot about us with those two features.
And by the way, what is the web address? We should mention, Briana.
Our web address is ksagclassroom.org.
And we'll repeat that here in a few moments, just to remind folks of how to get to that fine website. We also should acknowledge that, as you allude to, Cathy, teachers are recognized for their accomplishments in adopting agricultural themes into their classrooms, and we haven't caught up on that front for a while, so you might share some of the latest news there.
Okay. Every year we have a competition, basically, that we partner with Kansas Farm Bureau on, and we select regional teacher winners and also a Teacher of the Year, Janet Sims Memorial Teacher of the Year, to represent us in the national competition. And basically all of these teachers are doing exemplary work in bringing agriculture into their classrooms. And this year, our teacher winner is Nancy Smith from Bentwood Elementary in Olathe.
So congratulations to her. She earns that recognition on the basis of what she's done over multiple years' time, what?
Yes. And actually, yes, she has done agriculture on multiple years, but her application outlined what they did last year in her classroom.
And can you share what she did?
Well, yes, I love this story. So she does a lot of different things with bringing plants into the classroom and animals, but one of the things that she did along the engineering side of things is she had the kids take on a challenge or a problem that was presented to them by the school secretary who owns chickens. And the challenge was the chickens were pecking each other's feathers off. So the kids did a lot of research about animal behavior, and they figured out that they wanted to make playground equipment to occupy these chickens so they wouldn't be after each other. And so the kids actually got a loan at the bank, and they created prototypes of all of the playground equipment for these chickens. And then once they got it all built, then the secretary paid them for their work, and then they repaid their loan. So look at all the learning that happened in just that one little activity. I just love that story.
And those are elementary school kids.
That's right. 5th grade.
So that's a tremendous effort on the teacher's part as well for introducing those concepts, and our congratulations to Nancy. Other teachers, though, are likewise recognized. You have a couple who've been invited to speak about their involvement in wheat genetics.
Oh, yes. We've been doing some work with Dr. Jesse Poland with a National Science Foundation grant. My middle school and elementary school teachers, 2 of them are now invited to go to the spring regional National Science Teachers Conference in St. Louis and to present a workshop. So we think that's a great kudo to them and the work that they have done in preparing these lesson plans, as well as just a chance to get the word out to their peers.
Well, the neat thing is that this program always has and continues to promote teacher innovation. The lesson plans are there, but it's the teachers who run with it, right?
That's right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And it's important that these programs be supported. And Briana, there are a couple of things coming up, one of which is called a Giving Tuesday fundraiser. And what is that? How will it support ag in the classroom?
So Giving Tuesday is a national movement that has been going on for a few years now. We've done it this will be our 3rd year doing Giving Tuesday. And it comes after Black Friday and Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday, of course. It's just a national giving day where lots of people across the U.S. give back to their favorite charities or favorite nonprofits. We'll be participating in Giving Tuesday, and we will actually have 2 match donors. So your dollars will be matched dollar for dollar if you give to us on this day, which is fantastic for an organization like ours and definitely makes all of our donor dollars go just a little bit further.
So will there be information on how to go about that giving on the website?
Yes.
Presumably?
So on the homepage of our website right now, you can find out all sorts of information about Giving Tuesday. Then there will be a giving grid that you can actually click on to give on that day.
And then I wanted to mention who our match donors are, and that is Central National Bank here in Kansas and also Farm Credit Associations of Kansas. So we're really grateful to them to help with that dollar-to-dollar match.
You bet. So keep that well in mind for Tuesday, November the 27th. That's the Tuesday following the Thanksgiving break. It's Giving Tuesday. Ag in the Classroom is in the queue for support as a nonprofit there. And Cathy, the other long-standing support mechanism for the Ag in the Classroom program, the AgriTags option for those who need to renew their vehicle licenses, still out there, right?
It's still out there, and we would love to increase the numbers on the road. We're right at about 1,000 this year. So that's a good number, but we'd sure like to increase that. And so all a person has to do is ask about this specialty tag at the treasurer's office, at their local county treasurer's office. And all the offices have an AgriTag to show as a model so the customer can see what it looks like. If they purchase that, $35 of that purchase then comes back to KFAC. And that has been one of our most dependable sources of income for us over the years.
And again, AgriTags can be facilitated through your county treasurer's office as you renew those tags. We wish you the best as you pursue all of this and develop still more for the teachers in support of bringing those agricultural themes to our classroom teachings. And thanks to the both of you for coming over.
Thank you.
Yes, thanks.
Over from the Kansas Agriculture in the Classroom program, which is officed here on the K-State campus, Cathy Musick is the executive director, and Briana Jacobus is the communications and marketing specialist. You can find out all you need to know about these programs at www.ksagclassroom.org. And you're listening to Agriculture Today.
Hamburgers, roast, ribs, steak, or whatever you prefer. Beef, it's what's for dinner. Kansas cattle farmers produce 7.5 million head of cattle per year. It takes about 7 tablespoons of peanut butter to get the same amount of protein in 1 serving of lean beef. Support your local Kansas farmers and ranchers. Eat beef. This message was brought to you by the K-State Animal Sciences Leadership Academy participants.
We're back now on Agriculture Today on the K-State Radio Network. Eric Atkinson with you. Time now to check on today's agricultural news headlines for you, courtesy in part of DTN. And Kansas farmers did gain some ground on the row crop harvest last week, according to the USDA's weekly crop progress report for the week ending on Sunday, with 4 days suitable for field work last week. Our topsoil moisture supplies at 22% surplus and 75% adequate, only 3% short to very short, and subsoil at 11% surplus, 81% adequate, and 8% short to very short. The condition of the Kansas winter wheat crop is at 42% good to excellent, 40% fair, 18% poor to very poor. Winter wheat planting at 76%, that's behind the 89% for the 5-year average, and emergence is at 62%, that's behind the 70% average. The corn harvest then is at 76% complete. That's behind the 84% average. Soybean harvest, 42%, well behind the 70% average for the date. And grain sorghum harvest, 32% done, well behind the 55% average for this date. As for corn and soybean harvest progress nationally now, we hear from the USDA's Stephanie Ho.
USDA meteorologist Brad Rippey says the weather has been good for corn harvest activities.
We certainly had a more favorable week for field work across the northern and central plains and the Midwest.
He says nationwide the corn harvest progressed 14 percentage points.
To reach 63% of the U.S. corn acreage harvested by October 28th, and that is exactly equal to the 5-year average. We've been slipping a little bit on that number for several weeks, and now finally we've fallen to average.
This is ahead of last year at this time when corn harvest was only 52%.
The good news is, though, that with the drier weather for much of the week across the upper Midwest, we did see some fairly positive harvest progress increases in states like Minnesota and also Iowa.
Iowa is still behind schedule, but its current numbers are a big improvement from early October when harvest was almost at a standstill. Rippey says farmers have been going after fragile soybeans.
Soybean harvest advancing 19 percentage points during the week, going from 53 to 72% harvested overall. That is still behind the 5-year average of 81%, also behind last year's 81%.
But he adds there is good news.
We did see some really tremendous harvest progress numbers in a large number of states, led by Iowa. Big jump from 37% of the soybeans harvested on October 21st to 71% by the 28th.
Other states saw more than 20% harvest progress.
Michigan, Minnesota, Nebraska, the Dakotas, and Wisconsin. So, again, things are improving, but still a ways to go to catch up to where we lost those couple of weeks due to the wet weather in early October.
This is Stephanie Ho for the U.S. Department of Agriculture in Washington, D.C.
The USDA is looking at the potential levels for payments under a second installment of the farmer aid payments. There's not likely to be a change, though, in the amounts announced from the first installment currently being paid to producers. That according to the USDA Secretary. Here's Gary Crawford with more.
Yes, there will be a second round of payments to farmers under the Trade Mitigation or Market Facilitation Program. Agriculture Secretary Sonny Perdue telling reporters in Washington Monday the payment may come just a bit later than had been talked about a few months ago.
I was hoping to get it probably by October, November, but I wouldn't expect that second tranche to be any later than December.
Will those payments amount to the $6 billion that had been suggested?
They're looking at the market conditions. Frankly, right now we see no change in the amount that would change our minds about a different amount.
Perdue still insists there are no plans for any trade mitigation program for 2019, saying, unlike this year when farmers were uncertain about the tariff situation and how markets would behave, they now have a good idea about that.
So farmers will make their best business decisions for 2019 without the expectation of a market facilitation program.
But while there may not be extra money for trade disruptions, Perdue did say there was a good chance Congress will authorize more money for farmers hit by 2018's hurricanes and floods. Gary Crawford for the U.S. Department of Agriculture, Washington.
Up now, this week's edition of Milk Lines with K-State dairy specialist Mike Brook. Mike?
Today I'd like to visit with our Kansas dairy farmers concerning lameness in their dairy herds. As we come out of summer and we head into fall and early winter, it's a good time to evaluate the lameness situation in your dairy herd. Really encourage you to maybe get someone in from the outside to go through your herd and give you an idea of what the locomotion scores are on your dairy cattle. You could do it yourself, but probably an unbiased eye from the outside would be the better idea. As you look at the locomotion scores they might give the animals, again on a scale of 1 to 5, you need to pay particular attention to what percent of the herd actually scores in the 1 to 2 range. In other words, very little sign of any issues with lameness. And also the number of animals or percentage of the herd that is in the 3 to 5 category, those animals that are very severely lame. And again, as you look at that, you probably want about 80% of your herd at least as a minimum to fall in the 1 to 2 range, and 20% or less of the herd to fall in the 3 to 5. You need to be really concerned about those that score 5. Get a very high percentage there, and that indicates that we've got some severe problems that we likely need to deal with. Once you get an idea of where the lameness scores actually range in your herd, if you have an issue, you probably need to assemble a team on the dairy. Probably need to get your veterinarian, your nutritionist, a few of your key employees, as well as the hoof trimmer in a room together. You need to talk about what you're seeing on lameness scores, and then also evaluate the risk factors that they see on the dairy farm. Could be related to facilities, could be related to nutrition, could be related to injury issues, and again, that team is probably the best to address those issues. As they do different things on the dairy, they also would have responsibilities for different areas and would be looking at different things. So bringing the team together is key in developing the action plan. So evaluate the risk factors based on what the folks are telling you, and then use those people in the room to develop the action plan. Once you have the action plan in place, it's important to continue to evaluate and do some reassessment in the future months. Generally, you need to wait 2 to 3 months before you really do another evaluation, but probably no longer than 4 months. Some of these issues do take a while to correct, so trying to go back and evaluate a few weeks after you started probably isn't the best option for your dairy. But again, probably within 3 to 4 months, there should be a reevaluation to see whether or not we're making progress toward goals that we have set. This is Mike Brook with K-State Research and Extension, encouraging our dairy farmers to take a look at lameness in their dairy herds.
Thanks, Mike, and we'll be back shortly with more on Agriculture Today.
While many people know hunger is an issue in developing countries, it is also a problem in our own backyards. In 2010, 1 in 7 Kansans struggled to put adequate food on the table. 2 K-State Research and Extension programs are tackling this problem. The Family Nutrition Program and Expanded Food and Nutrition Education Program reach thousands of Kansans in more than 70 counties. They learn how to eat healthy with a low budget. For more information about these programs, visit ksre.ksu.edu.
You're tuned in to Agriculture Today, and next up, our weekly visit with Charlie Lee, wildlife specialist, K-State Research and Extension, on another wildlife management topic. Well, this is timely for this point in the season, Charlie. Garter snakes, as they often enter homes with the weather changing here. This is a very, very common species in Kansas.
Yes, the garter snakes are the most common snakes in North America. They are harmless, non-venomous. There are a few species that do possess a mild neurotoxin venom, but it's not dangerous to humans. It just helps them capture prey. Garter snakes are found quite frequently in and around gardens or landscapes, and they come in a wide variety of colors, but most of them have the 3 longitudinal stripes one in the center of the back, one on each side of the body. Most times the stripes are yellowish or green in color, but again, that kind of varies between the species and the region.
In fact, there are, you say, 4 kinds of garter snakes routinely found in Kansas?
Yeah, we'd have the common garter snake. That's found primarily in the eastern 2/3, maybe the eastern 3/4 of the state. It has the largest range in the continental United States, and they're really found everywhere in the U.S. except for the extreme southwest part of the United States. Typically, those common garter snakes have 3 white, yellowish, sometimes blue stripes running the length of their brown or kind of a darker green body, and their heads are darker than the others. Another snake that we would have in Kansas would be the checkered garter snake. That's a threatened species in Kansas, not real common. It's a snake of the southwestern part of the U.S. In Kansas, it's found only along the Oklahoma border. It's one of the smaller garter snakes. Seldom does it reach over 2 feet in length. Then we would also have the western ribbon snake and the plains garter snake. The plains garter snake is found statewide except for extreme southeast corner of Kansas, and the western ribbon snake is basically found statewide.
So you have these variations of garter snakes, but they tend to gravitate toward a particular habitat, you say.
Yeah, they like woodlands, moist areas, meadows, grassy hills, and are quite frequently found near water in the drier portions of Kansas. I think if we had to have one common habitat feature, I would say they're often found in moist or wetter areas in the landscape. So when you talk about a snake that occurs all the way from Canada down to Florida, they are adaptable, and one of those species will find suitable habitat requirements really wherever you're located.
And one of the more, well, to some folks, startling things about garter snakes is that they tend to gather in fairly large numbers.
Yeah, it's fairly abundant. It's a snake that here in Kansas would probably has been estimated to be about 3 or 4 per acre, with a home range of 20 to maybe as much as 35 acres. However, in Nebraska, particularly in the sandhill areas with lots of native prairie and wetlands, garter snakes in that state sometimes have been counted up to over 100 per acre. So it's a species that is fairly prolific. They can have large litters. Those young are born live. They're typically less than 6 inches long at birth, but at times there can be up to 20 or more young snakes per litter.
And they are harmless. However, they're very adept at finding their way inside homes, right?
That's one of the common concerns that I get, other than that they're found, since they are fairly numerous, they're found up and around the home and the landscape or the water feature in a yard. But I get calls at 2 times of the year. One is in the spring when the males are emerging from hibernation. They're the first ones out of the hibernaculum, and they congregate again in the fall before they go into hibernation. But in the spring, the females give off pheromones that attract the males, and at times you can have a dozen or more male snakes that come to one female, which is why sometimes homeowners think that garter snakes are overrunning the neighborhood. And that's probably the source of the mating ball of snakes that some folks have heard of. The other time when I get larger accumulations of garter snakes is in the fall before they go into hibernation. Oftentimes that is up around rock walls, anywhere that they can get into a cavity. But just avoid the area for a day or two and the snakes are all into hibernation. But sometimes they will hibernate up in attics. People think, well, how do they access the attic? Even the smaller snakes are pretty good at climbing. They can use the gutters and the side of the home to kind of leverage themselves up on top and find a way in. Others seem to be able to get between the siding of the home particularly those that have vinyl or aluminum siding. Garter snakes are commonly found using that to access the upper reaches of the home, where then they can find a place that's warm enough to overwinter.
So then the question becomes, what is the best way of eradicating garter snakes from the home?
Well, the best way is to prevent them from getting in. Once they're inside, you really need to capture them and get them out. If there's just a few individuals, perhaps a sticky trap or the glue board works well. Other times you can create a dark, warm, moist area, perhaps in a corner of a room or a basement, or sometimes it would be in the attic. They will typically seek those moisture areas out. Then you can just simply sweep them into a plastic trash can and relocate them. Those that have been caught on a sticky trap can be released from the trap with the application of vegetable oil. But it's best to spend your time outside, snake-proofing the home. Simply do a very careful inspection and seal all crevices that are greater than 1/4 inch in size. I think this is a good time of the year to do that, not only for snakes, but also this is the time of year that many rodents are seeking their way inside.
Charlie, we appreciate the word on the background on garter snakes. He's Charlie Lee, wildlife specialist, K-State Research and Extension. With that, our Tuesday edition comes to a close. Thanks for being along with us. We'll be right back here this same time tomorrow, and hope you will as well. Until then, Eric Atkinson here. This has been Agriculture Today over the K-State Radio Network.